Hi, this is Shelly Diaz, School Library Journal Reviews Manager and editor of SLJ Teen newsletter, and I'm coming to you live from School Library Journal offices in New York City, and today we're here to reveal our best bets of 2017 for children and teens. And we're sorry about the lateness. We're having a little technical difficulties, but I hope you got your cup of coffee, and we're ready to begin. So we're just going to give you a few highlights of our best books for this year, and each of our editors are going to talk a little bit about their favorites, some themes that we saw in some of our books. We selected these 71 titles out of about 428 starred books, and some even that weren't starred this year that we reviewed, and I think it's a pretty good list.
Yeah.
We noticed that there was a theme of a lot of our books about raising your voice and you know, speaking up when you need to speak up. So one of the books that I found really kind of spoke to that theme was The Rooster Who Would Not Be Quiet by Carmen Agradidi and illustrated by Eugene Yelchin. And it's about, of course, a rooster, the title character, in this town, La Paz, where it was just really, really noisy. And they decided to elect the mayor, Don Pepe, to because he was going to promise to get everything quiet. And he did, and there were so many rules. And then there was no singing, and the rooster showed up on the scene, and he's like, wait a minute, no, I can't not sing. That's what I was born to do. And he inspires the town to kind of take back their town and bring back the music. This is one of my favorite lines from the book. But a song is louder than one noisy little rooster and stronger than one bully of a mayor, said the gallito. And it will never die so long as there is someone to sing. So that's one of my favorite lines, I think, that I've read all this year, and it's why we selected, and one of the many reasons why we selected this as one of our best books is published by Scholastic.
Yeah, I love that one too, Shelly. And the protagonist of this book, The First Rule of Punk by Celia C. Perez, reminds me a lot of the rooster. 12-year-old Malu also just can't be silenced. She loves punk rock, she loves the Ramones, she loves rocking heavy eyeliner, she likes zines. And she goes to a new school, and that doesn't go over so well. The principal is, cracked down on her for the dress code, but through it all, she's really standing up for herself and meeting some new friends. And it's also a book about identity. Her mom, who is Hispanic, wishes that Malu would embrace that part of her heritage. So it's really about her kind of grappling with identity. It's one of my favorites of the year. And along those lines, this is another book that I love, Here We Are, Feminism for the Real World, edited by Kelly Jensen. And this is the kind of book that when Malu gets a little bit older, she's gonna love this one.
Definitely, yeah.
It's got kind of a zine feel. It's very like DIY flavored, and it's all these 44 different contributors, actors, writers, comic book artists, all different folks, from Mindy Kaling to Roxane Gay, Laverne Cox, Lori Halse Anderson, Courtney Summers, are all talking about things like feminism, sexual assault, body positivity, and it's just so amazing. And my favorite thing about it is how inclusive it is. I mean, we know that feminism sometimes hasn't been a welcoming space for all women, and this is an effort to make this space welcoming for everyone, which is really important.
Definitely.
And speaking of anthologies, I'm proud to share with you guys #NotYourPrincess, Voices of Native American Women, edited by Lisa Charlie Boy and Mary Beth Leatherdale. This is a fabulous anthology of art, poetry, writing, essays, interviews, just the whole thing. And in Lisa Charlie Boy's kind of intro, in her foreword, she talks about how she wanted to create a space for Indigenous women to kind of just speak their voices and to share with the world and each other themselves, their art, and to combat stereotypes, but to also, engage with things beyond that and kind of their own lives. And so there's just such a variety of mediums, and it's just a really rich collection. And in terms of creating, and kind of coming into your own identity, I have Next is Becoming Kareem, Growing Up On and Off the Court by the one and only Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And this is his first memoir for young readers. And he details his youth and kind of about how he came into his own identity, and how that often clashed with his family, coaches, friends, classmates. And ultimately the public when he became an all-star in the NBA and was widely criticized for his conversion to Islam, and how he talks about how it's so important to stay true to yourself and to develop your own, that coaches may not always have your best intentions, but it's important to follow what you want to.
Yes. And for those of you who don't know, Della is our nonfiction reviews editor.
Jesus. Sorry.
And Naz is our graphic novels and professional reading and reference editor.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Sorry.
No worries, that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
And another one of the my favorite books this year is a book that I hope more and more people are learning about, especially because Cherie Demaline just won the Kirkus Prize, which is amazing. And she also won the Governor's General Prize in Canada, which is one of their big awards in Canada. And she is definitely one to watch. This book is heartbreaking. It's a dystopian. And for those of you who think that dystopians are kind of like not popular anymore, this is the book to prove that wrong, because it's just so beautifully written. And it takes place, it's a kind of a post-apocalyptic setting where for some reason, and it's probably having to do with the environment and all the things that we've done to it, people can no longer dream. And the only people who can still dream are those who are of indigenous heritage. And unfortunately, those people who are not of indigenous heritage decide to kind of harvest and colonialize and pretty much kidnap people of indigenous heritage to take away the marrow of their bones in order to harvest it and give people the ability to dream, which is obviously horrifying. And the main character is Frenchie. He's 16 and he's been on the run because his brother was kidnapped by the recruiters, which is part of the government, and he's trying to find him, so he becomes part of this group of people who are kind of escaping but also trying to rescue each other, and it becomes its family. And one of the most important aspects of this book is the moment where they talk about story, capital S, and they pretty much talk about their own heritage, and they try to keep their own heritage alive. And it's one of the reasons why they can still dream. So it's about holding on to your heritage, about holding on to the voice of your people and making sure that that voice continues to shine. So it's definitely one of my favorite books of the year. Definitely, I encourage everyone to read. So moving on, I think we can get a sneak peek of our best books cover. As we all know, every year we get a guest artist, one of the illustrators who is featured as a best book, and this year that artist is
Catherine
Roy. Yeah, for her
How to Be an Elephant.
Yes, and here's a sneak peek of our beautiful best books cover.
Yeah, this book is, I think, hands down, or should I say trunks down, my favorite nonfiction book of the year. I am just a huge elephant fan in general. In my spare time, I'm always Googling videos of baby elephants, and I'm even rocking my elephant earrings right now. But this book is great. Even if you don't really love elephants, you're going to come away totally loving them. This is everything that a nonfiction picture book should be. It's got a lucid text, it's got wonderful visual metaphors, and meticulous research. Catherine Roy spent extensive time in Kenya studying elephants, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. Really adorable and never anthropomorphized, just perfect. This is one of my favorites.
Yeah, she's amazing. First sharks.
Yeah,
elephants.
Sharks, elephants,
Yeah.
what can't she do?
Exactly. And for younger readers, this is for young readers, but even younger readers, we have Round by Joyce Sidman and illustrated by Tang Yu, published by HMH. And it works at so many levels. It's a read aloud, you can use it in story time, You can use it for bedtime, but it also explores shapes, which is an early learning, especially when it comes to STEM and all the circles that you can find all over wherever you go. And it's a sweet story about a little girl and her father and how they explore nature and all the circles that you can find in nature. And this is one of our favorite spreads where she discovers ladybugs, and even her little mouth is a circle, so it's just such a beautiful text, and the illustrations are amazing and sweet and heartwarming. So this is one that we're definitely proud to have on our list.
So when that girl and her father grow up, they'll maybe visit the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
So this is Jason Chin's Grand Canyon, written and illustrated by him. And I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he makes earth science so riveting, so fascinating, but he does. And I thank him for that. So you have this kind of frame narrative of a young girl and her father. They're camping and they're going to go explore the canyon. And as they're doing it, just the whole time she's just investigating, and Jason, he includes all of this information in the margins, and it just makes the entire experience just so rich with information. And it's if you didn't appreciate the Grand Canyon before, you will certainly appreciate it now. And he just adds just like a touch of kind of like magic to it, and just really, a topic that could just be so dry is not at all. And so we're all in love with this one. And continuing on with STEM, we have our Life on Surtsey, Island's Upstart Island, from Laurie Griffin Burns, one of the scientists in the field entry. And just the premise alone is intoxicating. In 1963, an island was born, which is not something
that happens every day.
All the time.
So there was, a volcanic eruption off the coast of Iceland, and Surtsey. The island was born, and it was a sterile environment, and it gave scientists, a once-in-a-lifetime chance to study how life develops and how it takes hold. And, I really hand it to them in terms of the photography is excellent, the science is, of course, excellent, and the layout, the design, it's just so, and it's otherworldly, honestly. This just doesn't, I don't know what this looks like.
Right.
And I think this is something that will fascinate students for a very long time to come.
Definitely.
And speaking of books for older readers, the next one is called The Whydah, A Pirate Ship Feared, Wrecked, and Found by Martin W. Sandler. And you can't go wrong with pirates. I feel like no matter how old you are, pirates are a great hook. And this is about a really famous pirate ship in the 18th century that went down, and about the efforts to recover it. And what I love about it is that it's not about any one thing. It's got STEM in terms of the recovery and the archaeological evidence and sifting that, but it's also history and culture. You learn all about pirate society, which actually isn't as bad as you might think it would be. It's surprisingly egalitarian. And you've got all these historical personages making cameos. Cotton Mather makes an appearance. Briefly, JFK Jr. So I defy you to pick up this book and not learn something new.
And wasn't that I think it inspired The Goonies, the movie, one of my all-time favorite movies from the 80s. I think that excavation and when they found it was what inspired that movie. Don't quote me on that.
Something you just know.
Don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite books related to STEM is a YA novel, which you wouldn't think, but it's When Dimple Met Rishi, which is one of my favorite books this year by Sandhya Menon, and it's about, it's kind of a romantic comedy about two Indian American teens whose parents are trying to set them up at a pretty much a coding camp over the summer, and Dimple is very into coding. She wants to create an app, and that's all that she wants to do, and she's surprised at her parents and suspicious of why her parents would want to send her to a coding camp when most of them, well, especially her mom, are more concerned about her finding the perfect Indian husband. And they find him in Rishi, and he goes, and he thinks that Dimple knows him, so the first time they meet him, he's like, "Hello, I'm gonna marry you." And of course she goes on to throw her Starbucks in his face, which is kind of really funny in the back cover how they show that. But little by little they become friends, and a little bit more, and more than a romantic comedy, it also explores racism, explores cultural heritage, explores even sexism within the tech community. So it might at surface level seem like a romantic comedy, but it has really strong themes, and it's a really cool way to show women and men that girls can code and all those things. Another thing that I love about this book is the friendships in it. She becomes friends with a lot of girls, including a Dominican girl, and I'm Dominican, and it's very rare to find a Dominican in YA fiction, so I was very happy about that. We have some other books that talks a lot about friendships, including one of my other favorites this year, Wild Beauty, and this is by Anne-Marie McLemore, published by Firewall and Friends. We don't have the finished copy, but I will tell you the finished book is gorgeous. All these flowers are kind of raised, and you can just put your hand over it, but unfortunately I forgot to bring it today. But this one, it's a lush, magical realism tale. You're never quite sure what time period it's set, and it's about 5 girl cousins. And the history of the No Me Olvides family, the women, is that every man that they fall in love with vanishes. Something horrible happens to him. Sometimes he just disappears out of thin air, sometimes he just leaves and breaks everyone's hearts. And every generation is like that. They have this curse. And this time around, the 5 girl cousins think that they're safe because they're all in love with one girl. And so they thought they've escaped it, but obviously then we won't have a story. And another thing that happens is that a boy reappears, which is opposite of what usually happens. So I love the girl cousins in here. They're friends. They're not just family. They're friends and family. And there's just so much in this book, and it's one of my favorites.
Another great friendship book is the aptly titled Real Friends by Shannon Hale. And this one shows that friendship isn't always easy, no matter how old you are. So Newbery Honor author Shannon Hale looks back on her childhood friendships, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and there's a lot of sadness here. Sometimes you make a friend, but she's in a group of girls or boys, and you may not fit in with everyone, and she never sugarcoats any of it. It's so achingly real, and you just experience all of the emotions that she goes through. I just adore this book because it is so honest, and I think it's one that anyone who's ever felt like the odd kid out will relate to. On a lighter note, I also have Supernormal and Jelly Jolt. This is a follow-up to Ben Clanton's earlier book about narwhal and jelly, and they're 2 pals, a narwhal and a jellyfish. And don't let the goofy, quirky look fool you, although it is very, very cute. At the heart of it, this is definitely a friendship tale because no matter how goofy narwhal gets, and he gets very goofy, he's always there for Jelly, who's a little bit sometimes insecure and doesn't always know, but Narwhal's always a good friend. And in this one, they decide to become superheroes, and through it all, they're bonding every second of it, and it's adorable.
It's sweet. And to your point, Manaz, about how sometimes friendships can be a little sad. I have The Song from Somewhere Else by A.F. Harold, illustrated by Levy Pinfold, and this is kind of a little bit different in that Frank, the main character, she's being horrendous. It kind of opens with her being, horribly bullied, and Nick, who is kind of, I guess you would say, the smelly kid in the class, kind of intervenes and breaks down the situation and in essence saves Frank. And she's reluctant to become his friend. He's weird, he's odd, he's way taller than everyone else. He's quiet. She doesn't really know him that well, but they do develop a friendship. And of course, you know, there's something else going on in the basement. And I just love Harold, like how, you know, they crafted such an atmospheric and spooky tale, and, you know, the illustrations, I mean, are just so gorgeous and, you know, evocative in terms of like mood and really just setting the scene, and yeah, and they're fun. It's very touching. It is. And then next up, I have, this is my recommendation for all Stranger Things fans.
Oh, yeah.
I would have to say, is Hello Universe by Erin and Charlotte Kelly. You know, you have 4 kids, a gerbil. I mean, what else do you need? And they're middle schoolers, I forgot to say. But, I mean, I just, you know, I'm a huge fan of Kelly's work, and I think I'm continually amazed about like how well she's able to craft, you know, all these very distinct voices, and really make, you know, each character their own, and you know, and how well-rounded she's able to make each of the characters. You know, even the horrible evil bully that you just don't want to like at all, she's still, you know, she just provides so much depth, and yeah, I mean, 4 middle schoolers and a gerbil. So good.
And to round out our friendship theme, I have they both die at the end, which obviously from the title, you know that you're not getting a happy ending.
No.
But it's one of the most beautifully written, heartbreaking stories I've ever read. It's a speculative fiction novel by Adam Silvera, and in this alternative world, very much like our own, everyone knows when they're going to die, or at least when the day of their death, they get a phone call and they say, "Hey, you're gonna die today." So 2 teens, 2 queer boys, get that phone call, and they find, of course, an app that can help them figure out who they can spend their last day on Earth with. And for different reasons, they can't spend it with their loved ones, so they find each other, and they decide, you know, we're gonna live this day as if it's our last, because it is.
It is.
And they slowly build a friendship, and each of these boys you just fall in love with.
Yeah.
And each time you're like, yeah, but maybe they're not gonna die.
Yeah, you just keep
And
hoping.
you hope that they don't die. But, you know, it's like a Final Destination movie. Like, ooh. But, yeah, they die. But it's so good.
Yes.
And I think we are actually now going to introduce our next group of editors who are going to come on and talk about some of their favorites. So stay tuned as we transition.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks, Shelly and Manaz and Della. I've read all of those books, and yet hearing you guys talk about it get me excited all over again for them. So my name's Kira Parrott. I am the reviews director at SLJ and LJ. And we were thinking about some of the different themes that emerged this year in our books, and one of them was about family, about the strengths, the bonds, the joys, and sometimes the challenges of family relationships. So the first book that I wanted to talk about is I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter by Erica L. Sanchez. And this is one of those books that a lot of folks, I think when they first read it, were a little put off. I remember hearing some, you know, complaints about the main character, Julia, being incredibly unlikable and sort of a difficult character to have warm and fuzzy feelings about, which is pretty accurate and probably true. But that's one of the things I loved about her. And she has challenges in terms of her family and getting her family to accept who she really is. You know, obviously her family is Mexican American, and there's a lot of expectations about what it means to be a Mexican daughter and the obligations and the pressures that she feels to her family. And it's complicated by the fact that her older sister recently passed away in a tragic accident, And not only is Julia herself and her family grappling with this horrible loss and grief, but she's also grappling with the fact that her sister was this like almost saintly figure, you know, and she was, in the eyes of her family and so many, the perfect Mexican daughter. And part of Julia's coming of age and her development over the book is reconciling the fact that maybe her older sister wasn't quite as perfect as she was always led to believe. So, excellent debut author. The other book I wanted to mention in relation to family is a gorgeous and very poignant picture book called Town is by the Sea by Joanne Schwartz. I know, it makes me want to cry every time I read it, with luminous illustrations by Sydney Smith. This is the story. It takes place in about 1950s or so in a mining town, and so it's all from the perspective of this little boy whose father works deep, deep down in the coal mines in this seaside town. So I love the juxtaposition of these beautiful seascapes where he shows his home, which is by the water, which is by the road and the town, and the sea is ever present, and the way that the sunlight dances across the waves. It's just lovely. But that's sort of contrasted with this dread that the little boy feels, knowing that his father is deep, deep down underneath that sea working in the coal mines, and how dangerous that is because, you know, anything could happen. And you know, part of his day is waiting. I love this spread here, which is almost like a graphic novel-like spread where you see these panels. I don't know if you can tell on the camera, but it's the doorway. And you see the sun shifting the shadows as the day gets later and later, and then Dad comes home and he's okay. And there is an author's note at the end that talks about that life of the coal miners and that feeling. And I think it's something that's can be relatable, even if you're not, you know, in a coal town. I think many of us had, growing up, you know, family members who were police or firemen or firefighters and things like that. And that feeling of, are they going to come home? Are they going to be okay? Is something a lot of kids can relate to.
I don't think anybody does family dynamics and family drama quite like our Rita Williams Garcia. And in this book, her latest middle grade novel, it is about a boy named Clayton Bird, and his very tender, and he idolizes his grandfather. They have a very close relationship. And his grandfather has taught him how to play the blues harmonica, and even lets him sit in and jam with his bandmates, the bluesmen. And cool papa. It can be any boy's ideal grandfather, but he was not exactly an ideal father to Clayton's mom. And Clayton's mom still holds on to a lot of that hurt and resentment. And when Cool Papa dies suddenly, she disposes of his stuff and forbids her son to play the blues, which creates a great rift between them. And yet it gives Clayton a chance to go out and into the world and try to find the bluesmen. And this is Clayton Bird Goes Underground, and it is one of the finalists for the National Book Award this evening. And the next book, and this book could have been easily in the theme of raising one's voice. Mm-hmm. This is the book called The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, a stellar YA debut. And this book came out early in the year, and it has garnered 8 stars. Who knew you could even get 8 stars? And so there's been a lot of buzz about it, and it is absolutely worth all of the buzz and more. It is a book about raising one's voice, but it's also a gripping coming-of-age tale and very much a family story. And it is very timely. There is Star Carter is a 16-year-old who is with her childhood friend when he is shot and killed by a police officer, and is then painted in the court of public opinion as a thug and a gangbanger. And Star knows that this is not the case, and yet it is with the love and support of her family that she is able to find her voice and stand up and really speak out at a time when her community is being ripped apart by violence and protest. A must read.
Instant classic book. How about you, Kent?
All right, I'm Kent Turner, and the first book that I've selected is Ashes to Asheville by Sarah Dooley. And in it, two sisters run off in the middle of the night. They have a secret mission, and it's actually quite sad, is they're going to go off to their former hometown of Asheville to scatter the ashes of their late mother, Mama Lacey, and that was her wish. And so in doing so, they run off in the middle of the night on a boisterous and bumpy road trip. Let me say, at least 2 cars are stolen, and there's also a dog napping as well. And so besides the tragic circumstances of the backstory, it's very funny, and it's very unpredictable. And to get a good sense of its tone, all you need to do is really read the first couple pages. It has one of the most attention-getting first paragraphs that I read this year. And throughout, the author, Julie, she offers a very sensitive and nuanced portrayal of life in the South, and also of life in a household with 2 moms. And all of this is set about 12 years ago, about 2003, 2004, so it's before marriage equality was nationwide. And then my second selection is from Britain, where it won a lot of awards last year. It is Sputnik's Guide to Life on Earth, and it's by Frank Cottrell Boyce. And it is one of the more lighthearted, although it does have a lot of depth to it as well, selections this year. And let me see, as you can see, this is Prez, he's a foster boy, and this is Sputnik. And almost to everyone else, he's an adorable little pooch who does tricks. But he's actually an alien, and only Prez can see that this guy is actually small. He's in a kilt. He loves cigars. He wears an aviator goggles. And he has been sent to Earth to save it, to come up with 10 reasons why Earth should be saved. Because apparently real estate, even in space, is very pricey and Earth needs to be shrunk.
Just like here in New York.
Exactly. And so they go on many romps. It's very unpredictable. It has a wry sense of humor. It's hilarious. It's heartwarming. And I think that it appeals to a wide range of readers in the middle grade, from reluctant to those who just are voracious.
Absolutely. So one of the other themes that sort of emerged when we looked at all of the books on our list this year was about the arts and creativity. And so one of the books that I want to highlight in that vein, one of my favorites this year, is Schomburg, The Man Who Built a Library. So I really knew almost nothing about Arturo or Arthur Schomburg, other than that there's a really famous library called the Schomburg Center in New York City. It's one of the special research branches of the New York Public Library, and I've been there for fabulous events. They have wonderful collections. I had no idea who Schomburg was, but now I do, and he is incredible. So this is written through verse or poems by the amazing Carol Boston Weatherford, with gorgeous illustrations by Eric Velasquez. And it talks about this man, Arturo, who actually, as a very young boy, when he was in about 5th grade or so, had a teacher who told him that people of African descent really had no history, had nothing important or interesting or essential that as part of their contribution to sort of world history and culture. And whereas that, being told something like that at such a young, impressionable age might have, squashed any, hope and sort of joy and pride in oneself in many people, not for Arturo. Arturo, as Carol Boston Weatherford says in the verse, he didn't lose that twinkle in his eye. It actually started like a little fire within him to prove her wrong. And so his life's work was discovering, to find and collect and preserve the true history of people of African descent. So it talks all about the research that he did, the painstaking reading. He was super detailed, really tenacious, and he started collecting stories of famous people of African and Afro-Latino descent, even uncovering not only people who previously had not been in history books, had not been talked about in schools or in education, but folks that we do know quite a bit about, but that their lineage, in terms of their African lineage and descent, have been erased in history, like Mozart, for example. So a great picture book biography in verse, gorgeous illustrations. The other book I wanted to highlight on the theme of sort of creativity and the arts is Her Right Foot by Dave Eggers and Sean Harris. And this is one of those books that I was saying this morning, every time I read it, I find something else to love, and also pricks my eyes every time I read it. So it's about the Statue of Liberty, but in particular, I mean, it goes into the history, you know, who were the folks who designed it, how it was erected first in France and then disassembled, brought over to New York, reassembled, information about the material that was used and how it was constructed and all of that good stuff, the famous poem by Emma Lazarus. But really what makes this book stands out is her left foot, which most people may know lots of different interesting facts about this, about Lady Liberty, but they don't always pay attention to what her foot is doing. And as you can see in this illustration, her foot is raised. And we often think of the statue as being standing still and stoic, but as Dave Eggers describes, she's on the move. She's greeting people in the sea. She's moving forward, and he draws a line from that to the idea that, you know, freedom is not something that you can stand still for. It's something that you have to pursue and go after, and how important that message is, especially now as we remember and recognize the importance of all the people, the refugees and the immigrants who need that forward motion and need us and Lady Liberty to come meet them. So, one of my favorites.
I forgot to introduce myself the first time, so this round I'll let you know that I'm Luann Toth, and I assign all the picture books at SLJ, and among other things. In talking about creativity in the arts, I don't think there's a better example of a literary and creative exploration. This book started with a fragment of a tale that was written in the 1880s by none other than Mark Twain, and was discovered and picked up and teased out and embellished by Philip Stead, and with great humor and a little touch of allegory, and with gorgeous, gorgeous woodcut illustrations by the one and only Aaron Stead. And these are wood blocks that are just absolutely stunning, and they tell this wild and wacky story about a poor boy named Johnny and an amazing chicken, and there's a prince. There's a little bit of everything in this amazing tale, and I think it is a beautiful example of bookmaking and classic storytelling. And last but not least, one last word from the one and only Mickey Grimes, and this is a wonderful collection. This came out early in the year. Also, this is a collection of original poems by Nikki that pay tribute, that introduce and pay tribute to the poets of the Harlem Renaissance. So these words that were written over 100 years ago, she has taken just phrases and stanzas, and using a device called the Golden Shovel has created brand new words that incorporate as the last word in each line from in the original works. And all of these, each and every poem has been illustrated by a different African American artist. They are stunning examples of different types of mediums and work. They're just gorgeous. So this is she's sort of passing the mantle in terms of offering hope and resilience to a new generation.
Now for a change of pace, for older readers, I've selected Eyes of the World. It's about Robert Capa and Gerda Taro. And the invention of modern photojournalism is part of the subtitle. And it does explain that and a lot more. It is very insightful and has a lot of depth, beautifully laid out with their work. And both of them were actually refugees from Eastern Europe, and they settled in Paris. And they were pretty much self-taught as photojournalists. And they went all over Europe, especially during the Spanish Civil War and World War II. And through the book, you get a really, I think, a great sense of what was going on at the time, especially with the Spanish Civil War. And I don't think I've ever seen that event explained so well or so clearly than in this book. And let me see if I can just, well, I don't know if you can get a sense, but it's really beautifully laid out with their work. And my next selection also is about an artist. And it is very similar to the last book in that it's very insightful. It has a lot of depth about Vincent van Gogh and his family. And actually, this could have been selected in the discussion that we had earlier, because it is very much based on the relationship between Theo and Vincent. And in fact, the bulk of the material is based on the more than 700 letters that have survived between the two brothers from the time that they were kids and throughout their lives. And in it, you also get a portrayal of Vincent, who at times did not know what he was going to do and was considered a disgrace within the family. And his brother stood by him through thick and thin. And during which you experience the trial and error that Vincent experienced as he became an artist. And it has really great back matter, and I think it's one selection that also can cross over to high school and also for adults.
Absolutely. Yes. So we want to know what you guys think of our picks. This is just a sampling of our full list, which how many titles do we have on our list?
71.
71 titles. So in just a few minutes, that list is going to go live, and the website is slj.com/best-of-2017. slj.com/best-of-2017. We'll also tweet that out, and you'll be able to see a slideshow of all of the books on our list, plus there's a downloadable PDF with the final list. If you think we missed something big, if you're like, how could they not have included my favorite book? Or if you think we did a pretty good job, we want to hear from you. We want to know what we got right, maybe what we got wrong. We can take it. We want to hear what you think. And you can tweet at us. You can go into the Facebook Live chat or email us anytime. A few notes. All of the lists and the books and everything will also, of course, be in our December issue. And today we have another Facebook Live treat coming up. If you'd like to log back in today at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we are going to be chatting right here live with Alana K. Arnold, who is the author of What Girls Are Made Of, which, spoiler alert, is also on our best books list, and she is a finalist for the National Book Award. So she's in town for the event this evening, and we figured let's have her come down and chat a little bit. So Shelley Diaz, our YA editor, will be in conversation with her today at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time.
Right here.
Right here. So again, let us know what you think. Please tweet at us. Send us a message. I hope that you all enjoy the list. We all, as Shelley mentioned, we go through hundreds of books that we think about every year, that we've starred, that we've loved, and we have some deep discussions about them. Usually no tears, but definitely some strong passions to winnow down to what we think are the very best essential must-have books that were published of that year. And I think a lot of them make great gifts too. So download the list, go out and get them and share them. And I think that we'll wrap things up. Thanks for joining us today, and thanks to all of the editors and everyone who helped us do this. Bye.
Happy reading.
See you later. Happy reading.